What would you say is like your favorite adult job that you've had?
I have never enjoyed a job. Let's say it at the same time. We love to
Relax. We
I
love
to relax.
I'm Haley Griswold.
And I'm Jake Deaton.
And this is The Lost Lore. You never told me that.
Hi, Haley.
Hi, Jake.
We launched a podcast.
We launched
Oh
it!
my
We're
God.
live. People know that we exist and that we do this, that we own microphones.
This is the first time we've recorded since The Lost Lore came out.
I know.
And it actually makes me so much more excited to record. I have really loved getting to like hear from people and like have the clips and like.
Me too. And thank you so much to everyone who's been listening and, leaving comments, following us everywhere. Like
It really helps.
It
Like
really helps so much.
rating
Yeah.
the show, sharing the show, like all of that stuff is like, it really legitimately helps push it out there.
And we just are so grateful that you guys are, receptive and into it because we're into it. And we've been wanting to do this for a long time. When we first started, I should have made a dress code policy that said we just wear all blacks. But somehow I ended up being the mother who lets her adult male son dress himself. And so in the first 5 episodes, we've gotten our Old Navy Plains sweater. We got our Harry Potter getup. Then you went with full-blown Pokemon nerd. Then we went ahead and said hello to Taylor Swift in the Bejeweled apron. And now we look like we're doing some sort of investment banking bro podcast with your Apple shirt on.
You know my nipples right here.
Fantastic.
I'm just getting started. To me, I'm like, this is my Gaga era. Like, this podcast is where I'm really going to turn it out. Just wait.
I feel like this is a threat.
It is.
And a promise. Before we started the podcast, I never even considered looking at your resume. Big mistake. So today, we are going to be finally doing that. Deep dive into our
jobs.
So do you want to tell me about your first job?
My first job ever was working in a coffee shop when I was in high school. I really, really wanted to go on like that, like how every high school class does like a Euro trip.
Yes.
My little hillbilly high school, this was not a normal thing that happened in my high school. It was like maybe once every 5 years, someone would get together a group of like maybe 3 or 4 students that would go to like London or Paris.
Oh, wow. It was really small.
Too young for OnlyFans.
So you had to do the indie route and go be a barista?
Well, I wasn't the barista. I was the line chef. So I was cooking the sandwiches.
A chef, you say?
Yeah, they said yes, chef, no chef. I wore a big hat. Not really. Basically, I just assembled sandwiches. I loved this job. It was so much fun. It was like so straightforward. I love a job where you have a task.
Yeah.
Where I have like a list. I'm like 7 p.m. clean the board. How
Simple
easy.
enough.
Like I just like tell me what to do. In sex also. But I loved that job. The girls who worked there, the baristas, we got along so well. And this is in like my little conservative hometown. And so they loved me because I was gay. And because I did not say I was gay. You know what I mean? Like they liked that I was giving them the flamer.
Right.
And everything but name. And
Right.
I used to go right around these girls, and I remember, like, one of my vivid memories after work was they would go and cut down road signs. And there was one road sign where they were, like, really beefing with the local police.
What do you mean? Like that a chainsaw?
They
How
had
were they
a saw.
cutting this down?
It was like a manual saw, like one person on each side, like a Bugs Bunny cartoon, like saw back and forth. And they would continuously go steal Lick Log Lane in Avery County. The Lick Log was the name of
Lick Log.
And I remember sitting in a car with these baristas, and we, had a long shift. And I remember, I'm going to use fake names, but I remember Hillary saying, "Come on, Chelsea. Come on, Chelsea." And just hearing
I'm
the sound
imagining
of the
Hillary
saw.
Clinton and Chelsea
Chelsea Clinton
sawing off this thing right now.
And the police were around because they stole this road sign like 6 times. I wish I had one. We could put it up here.
That would be amazing.
What was your first job?
To be honest, my first job, I was like 8 years old. Mind you, I'm going to put a disclaimer, they didn't pay me. But when they're giving you 15-minute breaks, you're working, right? So my first job was working in the library when I was in 2nd grade. And this was when I learned that, like, if you want to be taken seriously as a woman behind a desk, you got to be chewing gum. So I had my gum, I was chewing my gum. Kindergartners would come up, they look for their book. I always had my joke ready where I'd be like, "Let me ask my friend Dewey." Yes, Ma. And I type it in. Yeah, baby, they've got rainbow fish down on the yellow aisle.
How did you get this gig? Was this like...
It was like at school. Like I was just friends with our librarian, Miss Franklin, who was a British woman. And actually, as I tell more about other jobs, you'll see that like the British had a great impact on me professionally. And so I would spend days there.
That's amazing. That's actually
But
so cool.
I also worked a second job. That was my sort of secretarial, easy job. Then I had my manual labor shift because
Same age?
same age. I loved Reba McEntire from the beginning of my life.
Single mom who works 2 jobs.
2 years since I was 8. And so my other job, my manual labor job, was working at the nursing home, interestingly, with my grandmother, who was employed at the nursing home.
Not a
She
resident.
didn't go. She was not a resident. This is like parents had me in high school vibes.
She was 37. at the
She
time.
was like barely 40. And she worked in the kitchen and she would like run the food. And then this was like Gordon Ramsay was really big coming up on TV at the time. So I was running this kitchen like, where is Miss Dillon's apple juice? This is orange juice.
Made the fucking tapioca.
Mind you, Miss Dillon doesn't even know how to drink out of a straw at this point anymore. But this was like my first really serious job, was running food at this nursing home. And there was some like, you know, it's a toxic work environment because old people, you know, when they start to lose their minds, this is like no disrespect. This is just straight fact. Like I'm talking about my, you know, professional job. That's all. They start to regress mentally. And so they like to have things like baby dolls and stuffed animals.
It's sweet.
Stuffed animals that you might want when you're also 8. These old ladies are like, they're dirty after you touch them. So it's just not fair. There's no playing, there's no sharing, there's no fun. It's just changing bedpans and delivering
You were
gifts.
changing bedpans
And giving showers, yes. Yes. My Nana was like, I can't do it on my own. So she enlisted me. Never once paid.
There is a pending lawsuit. We can't speak anymore about it.
Conversation over. My first job where I was paid on the books was working at a nursery. By the way, this is the nursery that when I was born, I went to. Christian daycare.
Aww.
I'm not going to really say much else just because I'm still scared of management. They told my mom.
On you?
My mom that I talk too much at work. So they'll be happy to find out that I have a podcast and I can talk as much as I want now. So what about you? What after that?
I feel like most of my best jobs are like the more recent ones even. Like
Yeah.
I had a lot of like odds and ends growing up, but my last job before I left to like take care of my son was working in college admissions, which I think is like such a fun kind of like mysterious topic. Like I remember when I was applying for colleges, I was like, so what do you think of me? Like what really drew me to you? Like I know why I said yes, why do you say yes?
It's one of those I still wonder like
big
what
time.
was
I
happening
wish
when
I
my
could read the
application went
notes,
across their desk.
right?
Yeah.
Like probably crying, you know, some like wow how strong he is and like
Yes.
smart too.
Right.
One of my favorite apps that I ever received was a really strong application, student from like a private school, great grades, great extracurriculars, and then I get to the essay. I'm going to tell you the essay is important, but it's like the grades are more important. Like the essay is kind of what could put you over or under if you're on the edge.
See, that's interesting because I always felt that my essay is what got me into college. So tell me
Well,
more.
I mean, it still could be,
Yeah.
but it depends like where you're falling on the and like if you're right on the edge, the essay can push you over the finish line. But I remember I liked this kid. I was like, I want to admit him. And then I got to the essay, and the first line, I'm paraphrasing here, but was something like, I'm kind of a dichotomy. I'm like a mystery. I'm 2 people in one body that you wouldn't expect. And I was like, okay, LGBT, like let's get into it. Like, you know, you have a LGBT reader. That's where I thought the direction we were going. Second sentence, I'm a white boy who likes rap music.
So you were like school shooter alert. Decline. Rejected.
And you just exactly. But I think one of my all-time favorite parts of working at missions is that we do a lot of recruitment. So you get to travel all around the country. You get to visit all sorts of schools. And I will say, you're visiting a lot of, shall we say, very expensive, very nice schools, trying to recruit some of those full-paying students.
For sure.
And I remember that I once visited a school that, first of all, multiple gates, like proving my identity. And it's not just like, you know, at the front of a public school, like where we would have gone to school, you're like talking to someone in the office, just being like, prove you don't have a weapon on you.
Right.
But here I'm like going through multiple gates that are like miles away from the school.
Right.
I get to the school, it literally looks like Hogwarts. Like the library is like a castle.
Wow.
The students are all in uniform. It's a boarding school, like they live there. And meanwhile, I went to a high school where this was a common interaction. Oh, do you have class in the trailer today? Yes. Which one? Which trailer? And so it was a little hard to connect with these students, I would say. But overall, I would. That's probably my favorite adult job.
Didn't you have one experience there where they weren't just having you recruit, where they weren't just having you read essays?
So every year we did this scholarship thing where, we would assign this amazing full ride scholarship to a handful of students, like really accomplished students, super competitive scholarship. It's a huge deal. And it was like, had media coverage, and every year it was on the news. And they bring the president, and they bring the provost, and they bring the dean of admissions, and they brought Jake. Now, my title wasn't really up there with those other people. So you might be wondering, why bring Jake? Jake wasn't on the news. The mascot was on the news. Jake was in the mascots. When I talk about... I actually think that everyone should be forced to do this at some point in their life just to understand the misery of being in one of these suits. Like, when I go back to Disney World, it's no longer a fun experience. I want to just go up to them and be like, I know. You'll be okay. Like, the heat, that my hair was just plastered to my head. You're wearing these giant gloves. You're wearing these big hulking boots, just like...
And wasn't it like during COVID where you had to wear a mask
Yes,
inside the mascot?
And it was awful. You can't see where you're going. You have literally you have a handler. Like, someone was leading me around because I literally have this like a little line of vision. Horrible, traumatic experience.
No matter how big this podcast gets, you ain't going on the Masked Singer.
I ain't going on the Masked Singer. It's a panic attack.
That's so funny.
But my first post-college job was working right here at the fruit stand, we used to call it, Apple. And I talk about, as good as a job gets for retail. Like, anyone who's worked in retail knows that it's a fucking nightmare.
I've never done retail where I'm like trying to sell a product to someone, especially technology that half of them probably are struggling to understand.
Well, I will say the good thing about Apple is that, like, in terms of retail jobs, has to be the best, because the people who are coming in, as you say, don't understand their phone. They don't know. I could tell them anything. Yeah. I could tell them the phone will wax your asshole, and I'd be like, oh, you just don't know how to use it. Like, you don't know where the button is. And they would believe me. And they already have this sort of, like, Apple has this sort of je ne sais quoi, like, that people respect the company. It's like everybody likes the products. Like, I never felt like I had to sell people shit. I was always selling people down. They'd be like, I want the $1,500 iPhone. I was like, Susan, you text 2 people, and like you know, like, you don't need the 1 terabyte gigabyte hard drive, girl. Like, I was always getting people to buy a less expensive product. My customer reviews, stellar, by the way. I loved Apple. But my favorite thing about working at Apple was that I worked at the Fifth Avenue store. So the Cube, the iconic Apple Cube. Can't you just picture me there? In this very shirt. But my favorite thing about working there is that we got so many customers from my favorite country in the world, because they were the nicest, funnest, friendliest people I have ever met in my entire life.
Florida?
Brazil.
Okay, I love a Brazilian.
Me and the Brazilians were a match made in heaven in that Apple store. So I came to find out that in Brazil, the taxes on luxury goods are such that it was actually cheaper for these people to come to New York, take a vacation, buy their Apple products, and then fly home. And so that was like a very common...
plane tickets included.
Mm-hmm.
Cheaper,
isn't that crazy?
Cheaper to buy an iPhone that way. That's insane.
And so every day I would have customers from Brazil, and we were kikiing, we were partying, we were laughing, we were dancing at the table. I remember I would always get them to teach me a little Portuguese here and there. And my favorite word that I still remember, and every time I meet someone from Brazil, I pull it out, paralelepípedo. And it means the little cobblestones in the street, like, cobblestone street. And and these people just match my energy so well, because I'd be like, I speak a little Portuguese. And they'd be like, oh, do you? And I'd be like, oh, paralelepípedo. And they'd be like, ah, paralelepípedo. And then we would all be screaming. It was the best. By far my favorite part of working there.
They're the best.
Speaking of jobs, this doesn't all just happen. So I want you to please, please, please consider signing up for our Patreon. We have a lot of extra bonus content on there that's coming. There's already a lot of extra bonus content on there.
You can watch the full video episodes on Patreon, not just the clips that you see on Instagram and TikTok, although we also appreciate you following and liking
very
on Instagram
much.
And TikTok.
And please, please rate and review the show on Spotify Podcasts, on Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts.
It seriously does really help, because this is our passion passion project, and we're just really happy that you're here and helping us make it happen.
And we want to turn it into a job.
A real job.